Molly Tanzer, Sean Tedgerachi, Barry Gifford, and many others. You can read about those and other events and things happening in our store on our website. You can also follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for other details and things happening in our stores. Tonight, we're very excited to welcome back Mark Danielewski. When his series, The Familiar, started 2.5 years ago, nobody, including critics, readers, and rabid fans, knew exactly what this new world would become. 5 dazzling, cinematic, and restless volumes later, The Familiar is wrapping up its first season. And keep in mind, this is a 27-volume story. Redwood is the newest volume. It brings us to the part of the story where the little white cat found in the first volume is requested back by an unexpected phone call. Of course, there are other stories and angles intersecting throughout this nearly 900-page book, with many questions and curiosities answered, and many others that will appear to readers. Early response has been thoroughly enthusiastic, with fans and reviewers saying it's the best part of a series that gets better with each book. Mark Danielewski is also the author of the award-winning, best-selling, and groundbreaking novel House of Leaves, and his books have been translated, performed, and studied all over the globe. Tonight's event includes an audience Q&A if you have questions for him after his talk. And then he'll be up here at this table to sign books for you. We have a bunch of books on the cart back there, all the various volumes, all the various House of Leaves. And we ask that you line up on this side of the room when that time comes. Go in that direction. You can get your book signed and then pay for it downstairs afterwards. We'll be going through the line to write your name down on a Post-it note if you want your book personalized, and we'll be doing that for you when that time comes. Please welcome now, Mark Danielewski.
Thank you. I like that, restless volumes. Though there is something that, at least it's a long breath out, completion of season 1, but still before a long breath in. It's kind of that space where yesterday's gone, but tomorrow is yet to begin. So here we are. It's not midnight. Yes, it's definitely midnight. So let's inhabit that in-between place. Does anyone have a copy of House of Leaves I can borrow? It's nearby. First one. So let's start at the end of one book. March 14th, 1969. Who has never killed an hour? Not casually or without thought, but carefully. A premeditated murder of minutes. The violence comes from a combination of giving up, not caring, and a resignation that getting past it all is all you can hope to accomplish. So you kill the hour. You do not work. You do not read. You do not daydream. If you sleep, it is not because you need to sleep. And when at last it is over, there is no evidence, no weapon, no blood, no body. The only clue might be the shadows beneath your eyes, or a terribly thin line near the corner of your mouth, indicating something has been suffered, that in the privacy of your life, you have lost something, and the loss is too empty to share. July 27th, 1991. Make no mistake, those who write long books have nothing to say. Of course, those who write short books have even less to say. December 18th, 1996. The cats have been dying and everyone wonders why. I can hear my neighbors murmur. They murmur all the time. It's strange. Some cats die. Some just disappear. No one knows why. Redwood. I saw him once a long time ago when I was young. I ran away, and luckily, or no luck at all, he did not follow me. But now I cannot run, and anyway, this time, I am certain he would follow. So let's turn to this volume called Redwood. This first section is from a Xanther chapter. Xanther is the 12-year-old girl who found the little white kitten in volume 1. It starts at 5:30 p.m., September 17th, 2014. Oh, and I will affect some accents here in the interest of thwarting some confusion. I do not stand before you as a great thespian, so I am going to rely on your imaginative prowess to invest in me and these accents something more than they actually are. Why isn't Dr. Caldwell telling us this? Xanther asks, never anticipating the question, the words just slipping out, though without any edge or tone. Dwight Plager nods a lot, looking at walls then, and throwing his head like to get his bangs out of his face. Though he doesn't have bangs or any hair in his face, probably because there's enough gel or hairspray to keep all those layers locked in place. Oh, there it is. Xanther has the answer. Dr. Caldwell likes him a lot. I was just about to posit that. Meaning before pointing that out, you were thinking that? Good question, fair question. Alice is a good doctor, so good. Loves animals and saves them. Boy, does she save them, so many. But she's also really, really sensitive, which comes out like an accusation with those immovable covering stones, momentarily seeking out Xanther again. Alice handles most everything here, but there's one part she leaves to others, or in this case, to me. Does Dr. Caldwell, Astaire begins, redressing Dwight's familiarity first, is she recommending that our pet be put down now? It's something she's considering. Alice asked me to come and take a look and let you know what I think, but before I can let you know what I think, I do have to take a look. Dwight steps toward Xanther again, and now Xanther's the one who wants to charge. Shove him aside, get out the door, out down that strange orange hallway, out into the sunny Los Angeles day she knows is waiting, even if this wish starts dimming at once, like the day is already dimming, ending, even if Xanther knows there's at least a good hour before the sun goes, feeling it in here already setting, and no windows either, a sinking into darkness that seems to sizzle and pop and gasp. Did little one just gasp? Hey, Dwight adds, opening his arms and grandly stepping aside, her escape as easy as a few steps. If you know he's not in pain, take him home, please. Sure makes my job easier. Don't think for a moment I get off on this. Again, that wrong smile, though at least it isn't his I'm so sad, we're so sad face. And at least Astaire's smile in response is genuine, because hers is sad. He is suffering, Xanther answers, hating herself for saying it, though it's the truth. She's known it for a while, too, can feel it even now in the way his little back paws have started a series of tiny rabbit kicks against her chest. Okay, all right, let's see where we're at. Xanther, defeated, gently returns the bindle of soaking sweater back to the examination table. Dwight slowly pulls back the cashmere, and the little one seems to unfold with it too, stretching out, not in that feel-good way, but more in that way of letting go that comes with exhaustion, flopping on his side, hind legs wet, chest wet, breathless. With breath breath so small, air, if air could speak, would claim no exchange. Oh man, yeah, at least Dwight doesn't touch him. See that? He's breathing through his mouth now. Man, I'm so sorry. You never want to see cats doing that. How had Xanther been so blind? Though, like, of course it was obvious now, as soon as this guy said it. Her little one was way worse than before. Xanther feels the room bend even more toward darkness, as if the darkness held back by every day could do that to walls and corners, rounding them before driving them down toward an inescapable center. Xanther's lips and fingertips tingle then with a crackle, singeing every surface between herself and little one. She even tries resting one palm on him, as if touch might stop it. Her palm nearly covering him, Xanther's hand, a hand with a tail. Did she know he was this small? Of course she knew. Is he getting smaller? Does it matter? Especially in the way everything keeps crackling around her, so much so that it seems the world itself could in this moment just flash away, burned up in the instantiation of its future, this future. And of course that's how, oh, wow, Xanther realizes what she should have recognized when she left home, just how much the strange blue acorn is burning now, and much at the heart of her as it remains beyond her, hotter than ever before. And for one thing, turning to ash all her plans to smuggle the little one out of the house as a way to keep the flame extinguished, or at least dampened, and for another thing, drawing Xanther back to that familiar forest that now might as well be a forest of burning stone. You think he's cycling too? Xanther asks. No question, Dwight answers solemnly, or how solemn tries to be when it's not, unable to get away from that big-toothed smile, another swish of blonde hair. Xanther nods. She catches, too, what looks like a wince crossing Astare's face, like the admission of what's plain as day is too painful even for Astare. And she was the one who had wanted a dog. Xanther suddenly feels sorry for her mom, that she had managed to come around a little, only to wind up here. Do any animals who are cycling, Xanther continues, pressing toward the hardest question, which when it comes out feels as clear and direct as anything Dove might have mustered. Do any of them go on to live? Did Astare gasp? Yes. No, Dwight answers, shaking his head too, his face darkening, despite the halo of perfect hair, but also in this weird way that makes his big, bright smile seem still bigger, even brighter. Xanther can't make sense of him. He unsettles her, even if she knows he doesn't matter. Only little one matters. Alice, man, like I said, such a good heart. She can get close to the edge, real close, especially if there's a chance that she can bring whatever living thing she's taken care of back from the edge. But over the years, she's just gotten way too sensitive. It's maybe what makes her such a great vet. But when it's clear she can't help anymore, Dwight lets his voice trail off. When she can't help, we get you, Astare snaps, her fierceness returning. Sure, I mean, I'm qualified to do this. But I'm not a vet, Dwight answers, almost lazily. If you feel more comfortable, you know, like you prefer a licensed practitioner, there are other vets here. I'm happy to get one. They cost more, but we all do the same thing. We use sodium pentobarbital with a combination of other drugs to make sure your pet goes peacefully and painlessly. We like to give a good life dignity by ending suffering. Dignity? Xanther asks. The question, if it is a question, racing her heart something awful, maybe because the answer so eludes her. And touch sure is no help, even if her cupped palm over Slimsy little one keeps trying to feel it, as if feeling alone was an irrefusable commandment, granting even the most slender creature the power of human speech. When Xanther withdraws her hand, nothing in that soak of misery even hints at dignity. The question you have to answer is, hey, do you want him to keep hurting? Who are you? Astare starts to bark. Mom, it's okay, he's right. That is the question. And one certainty now bound up in the charging beats of her heart is that Xanther will do anything to keep her dear little friend from suffering. But what stops her heart too is the question of whether or not to end suffering is a legitimate reason to end life. Never before has Xanther wanted so much for a seizure to take her down, drop her to the floor, tumble her into that awful chasm, keep her out for hours, absolve her from having to make this gruesome decision. But of course, no seizure comes. No seizure for little one either, though a tiny groan coupled with a pained sigh lifts and defeats his chest. Dwight Plager steps to the counter where he starts to lay out a syringe, some bottles of drugs, other stuff. Unless you decide otherwise, and hey, really, take your time, but unless you decide otherwise, I will first have to take your animal to another room. Don't worry, nothing will happen there. I just need to set up an IV thing so everything goes smoothly in here. Then I'll wait until you're ready, and when you are, he'll just go to sleep. It's super gentle. It's a cheery little section. Oh, you thought it was going to get cheerier? This chapter is called Jasper. You Can't Be Trusted, Miles Davis. 6:22 p.m., September 17th, 2014. And now we are focusing in on Oscar, a LAPD detective. Then that's it? Cletus Boo asks. That's it, and Oscar answers, accepting another pour from the old man. I gotta say, I never figured you for retirement, Cletus chuckles. That reality just never crossed my mind. Doing something crazy for a lady makes sense, but not retiring for one. Oscar checks his watch. If he lingers any longer, he'll be late. Cletus takes no offense. Don't fret. I'll call you another one in a sec. Thanks. Not the first time a cab got lost around here. A bullet hole that made no difference to Oscar still got Captain Cardinal ordering the car to the shop for a patch and paint job. Can't have people thinking it's open season on police. Oscar obeyed, though that's not really the reason he's capping it tonight. Catla. Oscar drains the small glass. When he'd arrived an hour ago, Cletus set out a 1-liter bottle of beer in 2 small glasses, as if small would limit big. As it turns out, small stays empty as big tries to keep up. Catla, Catla, Catla. Where's your dinner? Cletus asks, refilling both their glasses, finishing the bottle. Red Lion. Glendale Boulevard? You can get beer there in a glass boot. Oscar nods, though he's had enough of beer. Scotch is next. Good or bad, it doesn't matter, so long as he has a few. Virgil will understand. He better. He's buying. Celebrating the news of Oscar's move to New Jersey and a new life of gardening in gray. Haven't been in years, though once went enough to know the regulars. Oscar wonders if he'll run into anyone from those days. The air tonight seems charged with that possibility, ready to catch fire with the unexpected. Catla, Catla, Catla. They find that lion in the mountains yet? Cletus asks. Last I heard, she's still up there, Oscar responds. Sheesh. Can't wait to hear what happens next. The TV in his kitchen is only the weather. The TV in the living room is all about a Medal of Honor recipient, Sergeant Major Benny Atkins, who's killed 175 enemy combatants. That and being stalked or saved by a tiger. Oscar didn't hear which. He prefers the weather, hot, no chance of rain. I guess something has to happen. Lion that big, that mean, you know she's going to turn up somewhere, and it won't be pretty. Catla, Catla. Oscar's glad to find Cletus found a good mood. He wasn't sure how he'd take the news. Maybe because Oscar still believes that Cletus sees in him a last chance to still get some justice for Jasper, his murdered boy. Though maybe it isn't that way at all. Maybe at this point, they're just friends. To Jasper, Oscar suddenly says, lifting his empty glass. Cledius holds out his hand, heads to the refrigerator, twists off the cap of another 1-liter bottle of beer, sits down, refills both their glasses. Catla, Catla, Catla. To you, Oz, I'm gonna miss you, man. Oscar's mouth goes dry, the kind of dry that's beyond the help of anything wet. New Jersey's not so far away. Yeah, right. Might as well be Kazakhstan. Cledius breaks out in a big laugh, gets up again for another bottle, to call a second cab. But he just heads out of the kitchen. Oscar hears a door open, hears the water start to run. Oscar had gone too far. It had been a nice visit. Too bad getting back to nice now won't be so easy. Oscar gets up and pours into the sink what's left of his beer. Now on both TVs is a story about Operation Fashion Police. 2 Mexican drug cartels were caught laundering money in LA warehouses and storefronts down in the fashion district. $65 million in cash seized. The story briefly interests him, and then interest dims, followed by a sensation of easy relief, because a dumb news story isn't the only thing easing away. All his cases are losing their hold, plus those that were never his cases. Marvin Dorgandrell, aka Android, Yuri Grossman, Eli Klein, Yablon Lao Song, Raylik S. Tarnin, questions about that wackadoodle warlock, questions about bleach, about pneumonia. All that urgency just fading. Kapla, Kapla. Others will pick up the threads, tie things together, net the worst ones, or not. It doesn't matter anymore. Oscar served his time, hauled in his share of maniacs, good men like Detectives Perry and Carter, even Captain Cardinal, even Velasco will carry on with the job of justice. They'll have help too. Angels like Plansky, like Virgil. What was that Rawls quote Virgil loved? Justice is the first virtue of social institutions. Oscar checks his watch again. Where's that cab? He hears a flush, but Cledius still doesn't return. Why had Oscar brought up Jasper? But even Jasper was fading away, and the lightness of all these departures, they've been departing for a while now, leaves him feeling free and strange, but also at the same time sad. Kapla, 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 Kapla. Oscar slides across the counter an origami honey badger, leaves it beside the bottle, reconsiders the beer. Instead, Oscar heads for the front door. Through the metal security screen, he spies his taxi idling curbside. Thought you should have this, Cledius says. Oscar's relieved to turn around and find Cledius smiling. Oscar probably just mistook a full bladder for heartache, until the gift makes him rethink that. It'll mean a world to me to think you'll have a reason now and then to look on this and think of him. It's a framed piece of sheet music, the first page of Rhapsody in Blue. He could play it too. Those pencil markings are his. I framed it for you. It'll hang where I'll always see it. I got tired, Oz, of thinking about who did it. More and more I accepted that whoever done it was already gotten by something else, or would be soon enough. Maybe by that lion in the mountains. Cledius' smile seems to widen because the joke doesn't land. And then, you know, I got tired of even thinking about Jasper. Really, really tired. Like a fall asleep forever tired. I got so afraid I'd sleep so long I'd wake and find Jasper gone. That I still can't risk. Oscar nods. The cab is honking. He has to get going. He needs a real drink. I used to drive trucks. You know that. Mostly city routes. San Gabriel Valley, maybe a little farther north. Now and then, though, I did longer hauls. Those can be great. All night with no one to tell you but the road. But sometimes you get so damn tired. You drink your Cokes, your coffee, you roll down the windows, take some cold air to the teeth. But if that don't work, you know what you do? You take out your wallet. It's gotta be full too, with your license, your ATM card, all your plastic lifelines. But most of all, it's gotta have your cash. Then you hang that out the window, holding on tight. That keeps you wide awake. The taxi had stopped honking. Cletus, you tired now? Oscar asks. Oh yeah, but I'm still up. Window down? You get it, Oz, Cletus smiles. This time because meaning did land. One hand on the wheel and one hand in the wind. Holding on to your wallet? Holding on to something. Thank you. Questions? I do have to point out that the lovely artist for all the flower drawings is in the audience with us tonight. If Caroline would like to stand up. She's a great talent, and she's been part of this project from the early on, and I know I would be seeking her signature out later in the evening. No other questions? Yes.
When we talk about the familiar, we tend to focus on the mystery or mystical aspects of it. But just as important to the book, I think, are a lot of really real human moments and lessons about things like love and uncertainty. How do you balance that when you're writing, and do you worry that it gets lost in the discussion?
Another good question, and a tricky question. There's an element, as you did not gather from the sections that I read, of this sort of fantastical quality to the cat and to the universe in which the Xanther and her family inhabit. But the question was also about a lot of the human moments, and whether or not I was worried about whether or not they'd be lost. And no, I don't think so. I mean, if they find a place there. Like, I'm so happy that that story is in there that I just read, you know, because I heard that story. That's just the raw truth from a truck driver, you know, and it was this great moment, and I knew it always deserved a place, and I knew it wasn't something that had a lot of special effects around it, you know, and you know, vast operatic music signaling its importance. There's another section I love in this volume. There's a lot. There were actually a lot. It was hard to kind of decide what to read that were outside of anything that would constitute a spoiler. But one of my favorite moments is when Xanther's trapped and she can't do anything. She just has to wait, and she reflects on this moment when that she can't run, and that she has never seen this moment in any television series or even any book where someone is just sitting there and has absolutely nothing to do and can do nothing. And for me, it's my favorite page because it just gets at that heart of how we have to deal with all the pauses in our life before the things that happen that constitute the story that we call our narrative comes around again. And I guess just the fact that it's there is just a great source of I don't know what the word is actually, pleasure, warmth, comfort. It's comforting that those human moments are there, because as you pointed out, you asked it, that's really what makes the familiar so meaningful. Yes.
Kind of maybe a related question, but especially from the Xanther reading, you talk about the reciprocity that's sort of engaged or called for with allowing suffering, and especially maybe what that calls for in our political moment right now.
So the question is, give me one more step there. Take it one more step further.
That's as far as it goes.
I guess 5 is as far as I've got, but I still need to go farther. I mean,
the reciprocity of that suffering, like
Like, what is the relationship between power and weakness?
Yeah, and
Right.
well, allowing the suffering. How does one allow suffering, and then what does that do to the people that allow it?
Well, that's the crux of the familiar. It's a good question, because in the very beginning of volume 1, some minor spoilers, all of the characters hear that moment of weakness, that moment of suffering, but it's only this 12-year-old girl who suffers from epilepsy that hears it and acts on it and saves this creature, and is still saving this creature. Obviously, you know where my heart lies. And I think probably the importance, if I may dare say, of the familiar is that it enacts this concern over the course of now 5 volumes. Because so often we do see this act when we're just seeing a movie. It takes place in a flash, you know, it's that heroic moment. But how often do we see it when it's actually, it takes time to constantly recommit yourself to helping something that is weaker than you are. And so, as much as it's about the actual scenes of Xanther looking after this creature, it's also, you know, the act of reading over a longer period of time that enacts that caring on the part of the reader for, if you will, the book, which in some way is this slowly growing beast. In the back, yes.
As you were planning in the early stages of the series, were the Narcons always part of the plan, or was it like came as you started writing the story of all these intersecting lives coming together?
So the question is about the appearance of the Narcons. The Narcons are introduced in volume 1. They announce themselves as, or I should say, one announces itself as a narrative construct. It sort of lays out some rules that then start to get broken. But they provide kind of a meta voice, which you heard a little when I was raising my finger. A bit like a Greek chorus. They're in the tradition of, well, a number of sort of tropes in literature. And, you know, specifically, no. There was always kind of, I mean, the interesting thing is, like, to create a work of fiction, no matter how big or how small, you still need those outer layers that actually aren't included in the text itself. But now and then the text can allow those moments in. For example, I wrote Johnny's mother's letters for House of Leaves without ever thinking of including them. I just needed to write those letters so I understood how he had his vocabulary, how he had, what his relationship was to a series of things, what his history was. And it was only later that I included, you know, those in the appendix. So the Narcons were kind of, I think, they're probably reminiscent. I actually haven't thought about this, but they probably echo all the planning that went into the familiar in some ways. They give voice to all the plans that ultimately dissolve in the writing, right? And, you know, remember I started writing the familiar in 2006, so I was working on it for a good 9 years before volume 1 came out. But their appearance was also in relation to the balance of all the characters, and in some ways to thwart all those plans, because you gotta have a good plan and then you gotta kind of wrestle with it and overthrow it. Yes?
I guess I was wondering if you could comment on the one Aquaria in House of Leaves that you highlight, what I'm remembering now. Perfect.
And to comment on that particular line,
Yeah.
like why is it purple?
Sure.
Yeah, but you know I'm not going to answer It's a great question, but I would say that probably the way into that is to pay particular attention to the color purple, not just in the text, which in some ways enacts the appearance of purple throughout House of Leaves, and also is very significant in the letters, and I think that'll give you a good head start. Yes.
Do you find it's easy to get new ideas for your novels? Is it hard, or does it depend on the day?
Question of ease. I don't care about ease. I don't care about difficulty. I get up in the morning at 5:20. I go to the gym or a yoga class. I eat a very healthy breakfast, and then I write between 6 and 9 hours a day for 6 days a week. Rarely 6 hours. So I know there's going to be hard days, and I know there's going to be easy days, but they don't necessarily hold any meaning, you know. And actually, I did have this wonderful conversation with my friend Amy Bender. Do you know the author, Amy Bender? Girl with a flammable dress. The Color Master is her most recent and amazing collection of stories. But we were talking about how at a certain point in the craft of writing, how you feel about your writing is irrelevant. It is something that you need when you begin, but through experience you learn there are many times when you felt so great about something, and then a few months later you go back and you go, oh well, we're going to cut that out, you know. I mean, when I wrote parts of House of Leaves, I can still remember just through the discipline of writing every day, I had just had a week of stomach flu, and I basically would crawl to my bed and take a clipboard and some sharpened pencils, and I would say, I'm going to write 10 sharp pencils. I'm going to force myself to write that. And I almost couldn't remember what I was writing. And I thought, well, maybe that's going to go nowhere. And later, they became a very significant part. So, you know, how you feel about it is not that important. What's important is how the reader feels, right? Yes?
So you said that you spent like 8 years working on this. So do you have to go back in like 2014 when all this current web stuff happened and see how technology kind of evolved and kind of go back and change things, or do you find that was kind of easy? If that makes sense?
You mean before it was 2014?
Yeah, like when you're writing in 2006 something that takes place in the future, and then all of a sudden the future hits and Facebook's a huge thing, or
Right.
Instagram or whatever that wasn't necessarily when you started the story in the first place.
Great question. So the novel takes place in 2014. I started working on it in 2006. So what do we make of all the references that are current to 2014? I think one of the things to think about, and again, this is my process, I mean, I spend a long time on these books, is that I actually don't start there. And one of the things that continues to keep the flame of faith in literature is that there is this kind of generous common spirit to individuals and to their interactions with each other and the world. And the things that separate them or create differences are far less consequential. So for me, it was really like birthing these characters, to understand them on this just deep level. And that was years of writing, really, to find that, before it even got to the place of story, before it even got to the time frame. And sure, I would sketch things out maybe in 2010 or something, or watching how it changed. But finally, when it was settling, then by then, all those things don't really alter the characters that much, you know? And I guess it kind of shows you that you've done your work well when they interact so wholly with the technology that's going on. Like Xanther's, you know, epilepsy becomes an experience of the information age. But my research into epilepsy, what didn't start with Facebook or communication theory, it started with understanding how she felt, right? And I can even say that on a character like Jing Jing. Jing Jing speaks in Singlish, which is very difficult to understand. It includes all sorts of Malay phrases and Hokkien. It's very rhythmic. It's pointedly supposed to be strange. But I had to go to Singapore a number of times to study that. So how was he appearing? For me, he just becomes this itch under the skin. Like I internalize this feeling. So whenever I sit down and write his chapter, it's not about all the specific vocabularies and the history of, you know, of Malaysia and Singapore and China. It's really just this itching right underneath, and that begins to order all the words. So you start there, at the deep source of who we all are and who we aren't. By the way, is anyone here from the reading club on the Familiar? Awesome. So this was given to me on my first reading of this tour, and it had already been flown around the country a few times, and it was signed by all these members in the reading club. And then every city I've been to, there have been members, and they've all come up and signed this book. So you would do me a great honor if you could come up and sign it for me. It's kind of like my yearbook, I guess, for graduating from season 1. And even if you're a lurker, please sign it, you know. And I'll put it like right here, so you can just come up. You don't have to get your book signed. You don't have to make eye contact. Just sign away. I saw a question in hand. Yes.
I know it was a long time ago now, but say for House of Leaves, if there was an inciting idea behind where you sort of just sort of that inciting that sort of set up the whole process to write, say, House of Leaves, what was that inciting idea?
So this harkens back to the previous question. I mean, House of Leaves started with just the impulse to write. Like, I knew there was something inside me, and it was like a music, you know. And so I was writing a novel about a family that was kind of in the mode of Philip Roth or John Cheever. I was writing kind of a first-person young man's narrative that was like, you know, Fonte or Kerouac or something. You know, definitely influenced by the excesses of the beats. I was writing essays on how text could be used in a cinematic way. I was writing poems. I was writing other stories. And I worked in this way for years. I mean, it was at least 3 or 4 years. And then I remember specifically in 1993, I had this idea of a house that was bigger on the inside than the outside. And when it first came, I was like, yeah, that'd be a good short story, or maybe it's even a poem, or, you know, like maybe it's a limerick. I mean, I really didn't know what it was, but it just sat there and it didn't go away. And then the aha moment came like 6 months later, and I realized, oh, the family lives in this house. Oh, the young man finds the manuscript, you know, that tells the story of this house. Oh, the house is moving, so it actually can incorporate all these sort of cinematic ideas that I was exploring. So it was sort of the answer to what I'd been puzzling over, but it didn't start there, you know? And if I had got that idea in the beginning, I wouldn't have understood what it was. But it actually just came out of all of that work. So the main thing about writing is you just write. You just write constantly. You know, you rewrite, you go back, you write some more, you know? And then slowly your mind is set to this focus. And as this focus sharpens, then it creates this mass. And then eventually, this thing that you're working on, you fall into its orbit. And then it's easy. Yes?
I was just kind of wondering, the way I was first persuaded to read House of Leaves is someone who told me, hey, it's a lot like Shirley Jackson's Haunting Hill House. So I was kind of wondering if that was an influence on you and how you view this in relation to just the haunted house genre as opposed to the Lovecraftian genre, which I've also heard House of Leaves compared to a lot.
So the question of influence on House of Leaves is actually pretty well explored in House of Leaves. You know, there are no real secrets. The lists of books there are made plain for everyone to see. Now, what you make of those is up to you. I mean, I suppose the book itself it tries to make at least as clear as possible all those influences. But I don't know if it necessarily, well, I think the hard thing is, I guess the question really is, what do you think the question you're asking really is? Like, if we're really digging into it, okay, so let's say I did say, yeah, Shirley Jackson, that was it. I read that and I said, I'm going to write House of Leaves and it's going to be, you know, but that's not the answer you're looking for. So what do you think what is the question of influence? Like, what is it that?
I guess I'm more looking for, like, not so much as how did this inspire you, but what you view the relationship to each other as. You know, this your work and these earlier works. Like, how do they?
Like, how do I view my place in that tradition?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I don't know. really don't think, I mean, I think it's a fun question, but I don't think it's my job. I think that's something to ask a professor, like, well, you know, I mean, I spend so much time trying to get outside of the tradition that I'm currently in, you know, like for me to sort of sit around and say, yeah, I'm in the Shirley Jackson tradition, which is a pretty good one, by the way. Yeah, I think there's just a resistance to it in a way. It's sort of like, okay, how can we do this in a different way? You know, like, you know, there's a lot of the same sort of typographical, immersive qualities to the familiar, but at the same time, it's now gone to the next level where there's this level of risk, right? There's a risk of, will I finish it, you know? There's a risk of, will the readers come? Will there be enough readers so that I can finish it, you know? And that adds a quality to the narrative that you're not gonna get in most other books, you know? So it infuses all the precariousness of it. So Xanther is, you know, forced to make this horrible decision as I read to you, and yet, and in some ways that enacts what the book is too. It's like, well, how will we participate in this? Will we save the cat, or will we put the cat to sleep? Will we put the book to sleep? You know, and so in some ways, I guess that unsettling of expectations is part of a long tradition of Gothic literature. You know, but I'm not a professor. Okay. Yes.
What's it like to edit you?
What's it like to edit? Now that's a question for my editor. I think it's probably a nightmare, but I think it's also fun. I mean, I've been with the same editor for 20 years now, and I think the fun part is we always had to develop a different vocabulary for every book. So House of Leaves had a certain type of vocabulary of editing. Only Revolutions, we devised a certain way of talking about it because it was so mathematical. 360 pages, 360 words, like how do you get into that, right? This one is moving so fast that it can't be, it has to acquire its precision from a different way. So we actually, like the television series, we borrowed a lot of terms from the writers' rooms that I had been privy to sit in on or was aware of. And so there would be stuff like, for instance, MIS was just make it shorter. So he would write MIS, like we can do this shorter, or MIB, make it better. Or, you know, it'd be a way of kind of like, or highlighting like, this is good, make sure that we keep this. And it was, you know, so it was, we had to develop a vocabulary to deal with what was going on in this particular book. So, but if you ever come across my editor, Edward Kastenmeier, you should ask him. Yes?
This is a vague and open-ended question, but what books or movies or things would you vaguely recommend?
What books and movies would I vaguely recommend to you?
I use the term
Okay.
vaguely because
Well, there's this
recommendations
book,
are personal.
and there's this thing that happens in the book. So I recommend that one. And there's this movie, and this really strange thing happens. And I kind of got lost because I fell asleep in the middle, and I had to get out. But I came back, but I totally recommend it. Is that too vague?
Vague wasn't the right.
No, it was a wonderful word. Are you kidding? It was great. I mean, look, what I just read that's very exciting. I read a book of poetry by Sharif called Look. She incorporates the language of the U.S. military to describe what's going on in the Middle East. She herself was, I think, born in Iran, grew up in Turkey. The book was nominated for a National Book Award. I'm pretty sure Powell's has it. I'm loving this book, How Emotions Are Made by Lisa Feldman Barrett. It's a kind of debunking of the classical view that emotions have a biological fingerprint in our brains and that in fact emotions are constructed. As far as movies go, I'm on the fence about recommending Blade Runner 2049. I did see it twice. I did enjoy talking about it. So that's a pretty vague recommendation. All right, a couple more questions. Yes.
I don't have a question, I just want to apologize for the disturbance while
I will apologize for not being aware of the disturbance. Yes.
Has Matthew Barney responded to Throne at all, and will there ever be touring of that outside Guggenheim?
So the question refers to a piece that I did for an exhibition in the Guggenheim. It's a big piece that uses what I call sort of the signiconic tactic. So it's sign plus icon, meaning text plus image. And that's pretty much what I do, because people were kind of erroneously using the word postmodern and deconstructionist, and so I said, well, let's actually look at what I do, and then, okay, let's invent a word, and I'm going to invent it since no one else is, and it's called the signiconic. So this exhibit requested that I do something in response to one of Matthew Barney's Cremaster movies, and so it was done, it hung there. It's now in storage. There are no plans to exhibit it elsewhere, but there might be. You know, it has to be for the right show, and I don't even know if Matthew Barney is aware of it, so that's all I can say. But who knows? Yes, and then we'll take one more and we'll do some signing.
So what does it mean coming to the end of the first season? Like what does that mean in terms of the structure of the 27 books? And also, please don't stop writing it.
Oh, thank you. What do you mean by what does it mean? Like, how do I feel about it, or what is the...
Like, does it mean that certain narrative arcs are coming to an end?
Well, who here has read Volume 5? Has anyone read it? What do you think? Do some arcs land?
There's a nice dating wall.
Yeah, there you go. So, there's well, there's a bunch of things that happen. Yes, thematic arcs begin to land. I actually look at volumes 1 through 5 as, well, I look at them all. That's unfair. I mean, there's something about season 1 that completes itself. There's still plenty more to tell, but something very, I'm talking in this vague way because there are a lot of spoilers, and so for me to start to lay out what is happening in the book will spoil it for you. But some key things happen which I think lay out the subjects, not only of the narratives in terms of the characters, but also an argument about culture. And that's the hardest one. And maybe it's one I think the reading group may be tackling soon, because it's easy to also fall into all the tiny bits. But culture is something that we have to regard as something that, yes, we can appropriate, but we also have to be aware that culture can be very powerful and it can appropriate us. And so what is that relationship? And in some ways, it gets back to that question that you were asking about reciprocity with suffering. It's again, power and weakness. It's that which has influence and that which has no influence, and how these things are so powerful in bringing all of us together. And if they can be negotiated well, then there's no end to what positive results can come out of it. And I think the key, for me at least, is that what season 1 finally does is it places dead center the cat in all of these lives. See, it's very strange. The cat's rescued in 1, and for most of the conversation about the familiar, it's all about the characters. But the cat is just completely silent. But the cat begins to find its own voice, and its own voice is very, very different from the human voice. And I think that's the larger project of the familiar, and it's one not to forget, is how do we continue to place nature in our lives? Now, I'm in Oregon, a state that's covered in beauteous, forests and lakes. But it's still easy to forget it in terms of how we think. So I just saw Ken Burns's Vietnam. I would recommend that. And it's an amazing, you know, and considering how long it is, concise look at those decades of war and what it did to one country and what it did to this country. But I still found it kind of amazing, coming from such an accomplished filmmaker, that however many times we saw these radiant, spectacular blooms of napalm, you know, emerging over the jungle, and saw these firefights and these gruesome human battles, there was never a word spared for all the animals that vanished in those moments. Not animals that were property or pets, just animals that were living their lives, and in a flash, they were gone. Where's the language for that? I'm not talking about indignity or a self-righteous rage that humans are so good at, like, lifting up in themselves to vent against someone else. I'm just talking about, where's the naming? Why can't we at least start with saying, this is also here. We share this space here with these creatures. And so at the very heart of the familiar is the actual creature and the emblem of all those creatures that needs to be regarded in a way that's different from the way we would regard each other, and to give that creature place. Thank you. I go to my seat.
Thanks so much, Mark. Thanks everyone for coming out. Folks back there, some of the older folks are back by the information desk. And we'll put, oh yeah.
Book clubs right here.
You could sign Mark's book.
Oh yes. Hey, I'm going to get my pens ready so
Perfect.
you can chat away. Oh, and I'm fine with pictures. Just make sure you ask the person behind you to help you out so we can move quickly. It's okay if I come this way? Yeah, I was thinking that way if they don't want to, like maybe someone doesn't want to stand in line. So that's what I was
I just want to say you have changed the way I think about narrative fiction, and it's just mind-blowing.
Thank you. What's your name?
My name is Amber.
Amber?
Yep.
Hold on 1 second. Gotta get all the right.
I get to put a book on a pedestal.
What's your word?
Oh, wow, I don't know how to answer that one.
What are you doing? What are you liking? What's making you?
Honestly, the familiar, it's like the book club is huge for me.
You're in the book club?
I am. It's such a great idea, especially for a series like this. It really begs to have people talk about it.
Oh, and it's such a good discussion too. I like the voice of the reading group. Like, there have been some differences. Oh, actually, yeah, that's probably a good idea. Yeah, that's a good idea. I want to make sure I put this place where I don't knock it.
Oh, that's a good idea.
I'm a programmer, so one of my contributions has been helping people dissect the code. Yes.
Well, one of the programmers I saw in Boston, it was great because there were these little moments where I saw Lloyd, and so we got a moment where we can talk about future, coding projects. What kind of where are you?